gentlemen, forum Athletes Perspectives on Safe Sport, which is hosted by Ignite and Andrea Macquarie as part of the Building European Safe Sport Together project. My name is Silva Biedre, and I'm from Ignite. Ignite is an international sport event management company and one of the partners of the BESST project. Before we start, I would like to kindly ask you to keep your microphones off, but if possible, please keep your cameras on to engage better with the speakers. And use the chat for the questions if you have. We will collect them and address them during the Q&A, which is planned after the end of the forum. We have a very short time to cover a lot in 1 hour, so the Q&A will be after this 1 hour for anyone that can stay longer. Objective of this forum is to showcase athletes' perspectives as they will share their stories and answer the questions, and to empower athletes' voices, to raise awareness of transgressive behaviors in sport, and to contribute to positive cultural change in sport. As mentioned in the beginning, Forum is part of the BEST project. The aim of this 2-year project was to strengthen the foundation for European sports environment free from transgressive behavior. 4 main outputs of this project is to create a definition of safeguarding, to do assessment of organization safeguarding levels, mostly in Europe, and to develop awareness and educational toolkits and to create legal frameworks for sport organizations and sport events. That's about the forum and the BEST project, but now it's my pleasure to introduce Andrea Macquarie, one of the partners in this project. Andrea is an Olympian with over 25 years of experience working within the Olympic movement. She doesn't claim to be an expert, but safeguarding in sport is the cause close to her heart, and she has been a dedicated advocate promoting safe and positive environments in sport. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you, especially the athletes who joined us and the people in the audience. In the project that started with application 3 years ago, we have come across numerous words that describe harmful behaviors in sport, and a lot of different categorizations, everything from abuse, violence, harassment, different types and forms of those, whether they're physical, psychological, sexual, and so on. So we also discovered that all of these descriptions and categories and names for these behaviors are also quite differently interpreted depending on the culture, depending on the personal individual interpretation, on ethical interpretation, and so on. So we propose in this project that we call all of this hurtful, harmful behaviors transgressive behavior. And transgressive behavior means that any actions that cross the lines of the whether they are physical or personal, professional, ethical, basically it includes violations of boundaries of safety, respect, and dignity. So to make sure that we know what we are talking about, we need to, first of all, agree that transgressive behavior exists. And here are some examples on the next slide, that prove that transgressive behavior is quite prevalent. And it does exist, because in the project, we discovered that not everybody is aware that it exists or believes it exists, or sometimes believes that transgressive behavior is even part of sport or something to even endure in the pursuit of victory, for example. So first of all, I wanted to share with you a couple of studies. Results are 72% of people interviewed or in the study, in the Dutch study in 2022, described that they were experiencing at least one type of transgressive behavior in sport in their childhood. 68% of psychological harmful behavior, physical 24%, sexual 16%, and many all forms at the same time. And another study, there are many others, but another study in the UK called Cases in 2021 had a large sample of more than 10,000 adults aged between 18 and 30 and discovered or found similar numbers of 65% of people experiencing psychological violence, 44% physical violence, 37% neglect, and then whole big number of 35% non-contact sexual violence and 20% sexual violence. And while we also discovered that many people believe that this harassment or this transgressive behavior happens in other countries, especially those that have reports. Also, this study here included 6 European countries, among them Austria, Germany, UK, Romania, Spain, and so on, and they found similar numbers of cases of experiences of transgressive behavior in sport in all those countries and compared those to other countries throughout Europe, and they're very similar. And of course, we know that this is a global challenge that we should actually acknowledge. And because we believe that sport is a healthy place to be, we want to make sure that we get rid of all these transgressive behaviors. And we have to, first of all, acknowledge them and then recognize them. So with this, I would like to start the questions and to hear the opinions and perspective of athletes, one of the group of people that is, of course, in the heart of sport. And it's very important, in our opinion, that we hear their perspectives because we listen to a lot of experts a lot of the times, but we need to make sure, in our opinion, that athletes' perspectives are heard. And with this, I would like to first introduce our first guest, which is Rasha Sraka. And Rasha is one of the most accomplished Slovenian athletes in judo, competed in Athens and London Olympics. She's a European champion, a 2-time World Championship bronze medalist, and a Mediterranean champion. She's a graduate of the Faculty of Sport, and she now serves as president of the Athletes Commission at the Slovenian Olympic Committee, among her other roles in sport today. So Rasha, I would like to ask you, first of all, I'd like to welcome you and then ask you, have you experienced or witnessed transgressive behavior in sport, and how did it impact you or others? Did you talk about it with anyone? And why do you think that the respectful and safe sport environment is so important?
Yes, hello everybody. So to answer your question, yes, I have witnessed transgressive behavior in sport. I'm now a mom and also have children in sport, and I see it all the time. But when I was still active judoka, I witnessed both verbal and physical violence. So, for example, during one practice, we were doing randori. It's a form of sparring where you try to throw your opponent on the floor. And I saw a coach lift an athlete who was on the ground by her hair just because I think by his standards, she didn't stand up quickly enough. So on other occasion, I saw how the same coach hit an athlete on the leg with a stick to emphasize that she must not step outside the designated area of the mat. And there were many other occasions also. So I think, of course, the type of behavior by the coach naturally made the rest of us feel uneasy. However, at that time, we were very young and none of the other coaches, grown-ups, intervened, so which made the situation feel normalized. And this is, I think, part of the problem that we don't really recognize this behavior as bad. And Unfortunately, I didn't talk about it with anyone at that time, partly because I wasn't sure how to address it, and partly out of fear of repercussions. Now I know it wasn't the right thing to do, but because I'm certain that this respectful and safe sport environment is essential, because it fosters athletes' physical, emotional, and psychological well-being. If they feel safe, they can thrive, they can develop their skills, they can enjoy the process of training and competing. But in contrast, this abuse can harm athletes' mental health and diminish their self-esteem. I remember also from my experience, because we have different weight categories, and I had to be one category lower, and I was having really hard time losing the weight. And I went to my coach and I said that I cannot lose the weight anymore. But he said, yeah, you have to lose the weight, but if you stop practicing, you are a loser. So this is also a form of violence. And but back then, I didn't feel it like it was something that he did that was wrong. I felt it like it was my mistake. I'm the bad guy who cannot lose the weight. So I think that's why. And I also wanted to quit, but unfortunately that my coach left and we got another one, and I went to a higher category, and it opens all my future with judo. So this is really why I think it's very, very important that safe sport environment is safe now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rasha, for this insights. I will come back with another question to you and all the other athletes as well later. So right now I'd like to welcome Catherine Moyon-Debec, who's a former French Olympic discus thrower who competed at the Barcelona Olympics. Catherine made headlines in the 1990s when she courageously spoke out about the sexual abuse she endured from her coach, an act that was groundbreaking at the time. Her testimony was one of the first of its kind in the world of elite sport, and it challenged the culture of silence and complicity that allowed such behavior to continue unchecked. Her story not only exposed the abuse she suffered, but also highlighted how individuals within the sports community, including fellow athletes in this case, sometimes turned a blind eye to inappropriate behavior or even participated in enabling it. Catherine is a powerful advocate for safe sport, leading significant policy changes to safeguard athletes. She's the president of the Committee Against Sexual Violence and Discrimination in Sport at the French National Olympic Committee, and has contributed to initiatives like Century Sport Project, focusing on preventing discrimination in sports across Europe. Catherine has also played an active role in global conversations hosted by the United Nations and European Union on the prevention of violence and discrimination in sport. Welcome, Catherine. I would like to just pose a question to you. Who did you first report the abuse to, and how did they respond? How long did it take for the coach and those involved in the cover-up to be held accountable? And what challenges did you face during this whole many years long process?
Hello, everyone. Happy to share this moment with you. Thank you so much, Andrea, for your question. I don't know how I found the courage to go see the national coach. The truth is that he didn't really listen to me. He looked at me, reminding me that the tests were part of the preparation. By insisting, he added that I had to think carefully. if I left the end of the national training course before the end, my sporting career was over. Then the assistant coach of the French team told me that I was lucky to be able to choose a boy that I would be better in competition. Faced with my silence, he offered to be the first to sleep with me, specifying that he had experience. A few months later, the president of the French Athletics Federation told me, "My little girl, you are young and pretty. You will forget." French sports officials have never apologized. They preferred to support the athlete concerned with the national coach. On the other hand, 3 years later, I won everything before the French justice, which revealed the responsibilities of the state with the French Athletics Federation and condemned the attackers for the first time in the story. My case set a precedent in August 1994. In the following years, the violence continued until today. I still had to face pressure, threats, and even death threats, moral harassment, sidelining, discredit, institutionalized mistreatment.
Thank you, Catherine, for sharing this story that you experienced, and thank you for all the work you are doing for betterment of the whole, all the participants in sport. We'll come back with more questions to you later. I would like to now also welcome Giulia Pairone, who's a former professional tennis player, yoga teacher, and dedicated advocate for athlete safety and well-being with the Italian nonprofit Change the Game. After surviving violence in sport as a young athlete, she has turned her experience into a driving force for raising awareness, pushing for policy change, and supporting others in reclaiming their power and voice. With a master's degree in sports psychology and another in progress in work and organizational psychology, she blends her passion for leadership, well-being, and flourishing to help create safer, more sustainable environments in both sport and the workplace. Welcome, Giulia, and let me just go to straight to the question for you. What makes it so challenging for athletes to disclose experience of violence, and how can organizations create environments that encourage speaking out?
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Well, I think it's already a little bit addressed, but I think the first challenge is that so many transgressive behaviors in sport are so normalized. So it's hard, first of all, to recognize what's transgressive, what's violence, what's abuse in sport. The second thing, I think, from my own perspective, as a survivor, was like the amount of shame you feel when you are abused or you're violated. It just like makes you not able to speak, and we know from psychology that when you experience something so traumatic and so hurtful, it blocks some certain areas in your brain, and you're literally not able to put words into this unspeakable events that someone has done to you. So it's really hard to put into words what you have experienced. And then there was an article that came out this year on athlete experience of disclosure of violence, and it was really interesting because they talked about the athlete needs to perceive that the person they're disclosing to, they will receive their support for them. So it's a very important that for an athlete to disclose that they feel they will be believed. Otherwise it will be very hard for them to disclose violence. So I think to address the second part of the question, I think for organization, it's very important to create an environment where there's preventative measure and there's, education and there's awareness around what's violence in sport and what's okay and what's not okay in like the sport context, and that that the athletes know that if something were to happen, that they will be believed and that their voice will be heard. So I think that's very important. And there's approaches such as trauma informed approaches, so those are very important because in what needs to change is the athlete perception that they will be believed one day.
Julia, thank you very much for sharing your experience, but also what you are learning and what you have learned and what you are actually doing to improve this situation and hopefully prevent others from experiencing anything similar. I would like to also address another area that is often misunderstood, which is that most people presume that the victims are women, but there are many, many cases and studies that show that this is not the case, and it's worth to address this. Sometimes the reasons are that males, boys, are even more reluctant to admit to something like this, and it's some area that needs more research. So I would like to quickly share with you this article that you may have heard about. It was published in 2020 in Canada, where a class action lawsuit was filed against the Canadian Hockey League and exposed some deeply troubling allegations that former NHL player Daniel Carcillo, first of all, described being forced along with other rookie teammates to catch apples by mouth from a cooler filled with urine. He also detailed enduring hours cramped naked into charter bus bathrooms and being spat on and urinated on in the showers. This is by the peer athletes. These incidents are part of a long history of abuse in Canadian junior hockey, with stories of physical, emotional, and sexual mistreatment surfacing over the years. Despite the gravity of these allegations, advocates like former NHLers Sheldon Kennedy and Theo Fleury, both survivors of sexual abuse in hockey, see the courage of more players speaking out as a positive sign. They remind us, however, that much more work is needed to address these systemic issues. And of course, we can say this is not only the case in Canada. There's just one example I'm sharing with you today, since the next person that I would like to welcome is Amar Bajramovic from Bosnia and Herzegovina. He's an excellent student at the secondary school at the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program in Sarajevo. Ice hockey has been a significant part of his life since he started playing at the early age of 4. And he represented Bosnia and Herzegovina's under 18 and under 20 national teams 4 years ago. And with them, he won 2 gold medals at World Championships in their division. He says that hockey is not only his passion, but also a key motivator for his academic success. Since last year, he has been a member of the Blackhawks Academy in Slovenia. It's very, very nice, Amar, that you have joined us in this discussion today. We wanted to make sure that we have athletes of different generations, of different gender, of different experiences in sport. So I'd like to ask you a question, Amar. Are you familiar with this 2020 class action lawsuit against the Canadian Hockey League? Did you know about it before? And have you ever experienced or witnessed behaviors in sport that could be considered transgressive behaviors from your perspective?
Well, yes, I'm familiar with the case involving Carcillo and his lawsuit. It's tough story to hear, but sadly, it's not surprising when you look at the culture around junior hockey and young hockey players and the sports in general. For years, the abusive behaviors have been normalized, as I see it, mostly because they are thought to be a part to earn the place in the team, especially if you are the rookie, someone new. Stories like this show how this culture can get, especially when there's lack of accountability and fear of speaking, can get scaled to larger amounts, to so many other athletes experience it. Personally, I haven't been part of anything as extreme as Carcillo described, but I've seen things that cross the line, especially when there's are coaches who use humiliation or as a way to push players harder, to go harder in order to achieve better results, as previously the participants in this forum explained. At the time, people don't always recognize it as abuse because it's just shown as how it's always been. But looking back, it's clear that these things of actions can leave lasting damage, not just physically, but mentally too. And what's encouraging is seeing that people start to speak out, like Carcillo, and it's creating awareness, but also exposing how just widespread this problem is. It's also a big step forward, but we still have a long way to build so it's more recognizable and so to build sport as a much safer place for everyone.
Thank you for your insights, Amar. We're very glad you have this insight at your young age already. And I would now like to introduce our next guest, Zorana Arunovic, who's a four-time Olympian and multiple world and European champion and world record holder in sport shooting in pistol disciplines. Most recently, she won gold at the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Zorana is also a dedicated advocate for athletes, currently serving as a member of the European Olympic Commission's Athletes Commission. She's a member of the Serbian NOC Athletes Commission and the chair of Athletes Board within the Serbian National Anti-Doping Association. She's also an IOC safeguarding officer in sport and in general, a person who wants to give contribution to creating a safe sport for children and young adults to practice sport. Welcome, Zorana. And here's a question for you. How did you first become aware of the importance of safe sport and safeguarding, and what has shaped your understanding of these concepts?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me here and to answer your question. I think ever since I was a little girl and I started with my sport at the age of 15, I was kind of like in contact with things that I felt were not right. And at that time, I did not know how to name those things. And I saw that people noticed, but no one reacted. So at some point in life, in some point through my career, people who were making, well, let's say uncomfortable situations kind of like left sport, not because they were forced because of their actions, but because of their health. So they were not sanctioned for what they did. After some time, some other people kept on doing other things. And there was this beautiful offer from Athlete 365 to learn about safeguarding in sport. And then I started learning about that. And only through that kind of education, I realized what were those things that were bothering me? What was that feeling that I felt deep in my stomach that this is just not okay? Why are these comments regarding looks of a girl, why are they not appropriate from coaches who are like 40, 50 years older than those girls? Why is yelling at an athlete is not appropriate? Why is shaming of athlete not appropriate? So all of that I kind of felt is not okay. But through this educational course that I received from the IOC, I found names to the things that I felt. And then through that, I realized, okay, this is not okay because of that. This is not okay. But at the same time, through that education, I realized that there is so much abuse, there is so much harassment in the world of sport, especially for my country. I think there's so many things that are normalized. And from that specific reason, it was very hard to learn about that, because knowing that you grow in this culture where basically there's so many normalized behaviors of aggression, of harassment, and some sort of abuse, that was hard. But at the same time, it was so good to learn that this is possible to prevent. And through prevention and through constant education, we can, and through talking about it, we can spread the word that this is not okay. We can actually share the information with younger generations so they could know that they really don't need to go through all that, because that's not okay. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very hard job for one person, but I hope that I will be someone who will manage to kind of like change the world, at least my micro world, to change for better, and to start somewhere to change for the kids and for the future generations.
Thank you very much, Zorana. I think all of us here are with you on the same page, and thanks for your insights and perspective. I would now like to welcome Claudia Boke, who is a former Olympic fencer for Germany, earning a silver medal at the 2004 Athens Games and multiple world and European championship titles. Her leadership extends beyond athletic achievements, having served as an IOC Executive Board member, chair of the IOC Athletes Commission, and a member of the IOC Ethics Commission, among numerous other roles. Claudia is also a strategic advisor today to the Dutch Sports Council and recently concluded an 8-year term as president of the German Fencing Federation. She's also involved in the European Union's high-level group on gender equality. We're very grateful you've joined us, Claudia, and I would like to go straight to a question for you. So as someone who has held leadership roles in the IOC and the European Olympic Committees, how do you see the role of athletes in shaping policies around safeguarding and athletes' welfare? And what more can be done to ensure their voices are heard in decision-making processes? Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andrea. And I'm happy to speak also after Zorana, because it shows that things are developing and that it's worth being an athlete representative, and that things can develop and change. For me, I also started more or less like you, Zorana. You try to improve things. You try to you see things and you hope you can make them a little bit better. Maybe for yourself, but more for the next generations and the ones who come after you. And I started as an athlete representative within Germany in fencing, and then became the chair of the IOC Athletes Commission. And then you sit on the executive board. And I think there is the first of many dilemmas that you face. You are one athlete sitting there with sports politicians who came from a totally different path to get there, and you were an athlete and you more or less came in sideways, and you need to discuss every topic with those experienced sports politicians, and that's not easy. There are topics that are really athlete concerned, like this one, like anti-doping, but there are also topics that are broader. Obviously, everything touches the athlete in the end, but an Olympic marketing program is not as significant in the daily basis of an athlete as it is, for instance, with a doping control or harassment and abuse. And not all athletes are the same. And in certain countries, things are different. In certain sports, things are different. But also the ideas of athletes are not always the same. So it's not so easy to represent all the athletes of the world, because there is no one voice, at least from my concern. And I come from a democratic country, and I like to think democratically. That means majorities, but it doesn't mean that every athlete in the whole world had to agree with my point of view eventually. And that also makes it somewhat easy for sports politicians to find exactly that person who has a different opinion than you have, and then it stalls the discussions a little bit. but it makes it even more difficult to get important to get in touch with the athletes and to speak with the athletes and to make sure that the position of the athletes is widely discussed and also taken seriously, but also that you have a responsibility when you are an athlete representative, and that you don't take that lightly or use it as a stepping stone for a next position and therefore make compromises. At least that's my point of view in all of that. But it also means asking uncomfortable questions. And this topic, and I remember it very well, is not an easy topic to discuss, because in sports, you also like to show the good sides of sport and to show what sport can do, and sport has the power to change the world. And looking only at the negative sides of sport is for a lot of sports politicians not so easy, because they believe that the value of sport diminishes. And I think we all agree how important it is to keep sport safe, and for that I think it's so important to include the athletes in those discussions and to show what it does to athletes if sport is not safe, and that exactly that means that sport in the end is not how it should be. So for me, it's very, very important to have an athlete's voice there, but also to take that athlete's voice serious from all sides, from the athlete representative, from the athletes, but also from the sports politicians.
Claudia, thank you so much for this insights, and also for all the work that you have been doing and are still doing and you will still do on behalf of the athletes and sport in general. I would now like to move on with the question to Amar. In your experience, how well do athletes, coaches, and others in sport understand what is considered acceptable versus unacceptable behavior? And what are the reasons for this, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I think that understanding of what's acceptable and not acceptable varies. It also depending on the people in charge. Some teams and coaches, I think, do a great job of showing respect and setting boundaries for certain actions. But unfortunately, in lots of cases, there's a lack of clarity. That's partially because in these harmful behaviors, like aggressive coaching styles, are so implemented in the culture that people don't even start to question them, and they are seen as a tradition or some building character, when in reality it crosses the lines of the respect toward the colleagues, the teammates, or the coaches and other staff. Another big issue is that younger athletes, especially rookies, often feel like they don't have a voice. They feel that they are going to jeopardize their career, or even get even get criticized for their saying, and also that they will lose playing time. And this is the fear that it's make hard to challenge what's happening, and it's obviously wrong. Also, and there is a lack of education. I think lots of organizations don't have enough material to educate the athletes, coaches, and staff what's acceptable behavior. They may have the policies, but those policies are not, let's say, clear enough so they can understand it and even implement it in their daily use. So they start to build some policies on how this could be viewed on their own.
Thank you very much, Amar. Now I'd like to give floor to Rasha. In your view, why do harmful behaviors persist in sport? Do you think athletes, coaches, and sport leaders recognize this as an issue, and why or why not?
Yeah, I think that why this behavior persists, I think it's also kind of a mindset in sport that this kind of behavior from a coach, I'm talking about mostly about physical violence or verbal abuse, that this kind of behavior is necessary for athletes to push themselves even harder. I think it's a mindset, because this belief can, of course, lead to harmful practices being accepted or even expected, regardless of the damage that they cause to the athlete's well-being. And like Amar said, I mean, he said it why it's not recognized as an issue. I think it's because, like I said, the one key factor is normalization. Like over the time, certain behaviors, even abusive ones, become accepted as just the way things are. You know, I was talking to an athlete to this athlete that I described earlier a few years later on, and I tried to share my perspective, explaining to her that I believe that a good result could be achieved through a different, more positive approach from the coach. However, her response gave me the impression that she was defending him, saying this is his way, he doesn't know any other way. So this mindset reflects how deeply ingrained such behavior can become, where even those on the receiving end may recognize or excuse them. And additionally, also, I think when a coach is successful, officials, you know, club officials or even national, you know, federation officials often turn a blind eye to their harmer behaviors because success brings recognition, money, and protecting the coach becomes a higher priority than protecting the athletes. And I think this creates an environment where abuse can continue unchecked, with the athletes paying the price. And like we said, I think through education, we can, you know, raise the awareness that this kind of behavior is not right, and we can stop it before it gets to the level too far, you know.
Thank you, Rasha. I'd like to give the floor to Zorana. In your view, whose responsibility is it to ensure the safety and well-being of athletes and other participants in sport, not just athletes? Additionally, what role can athletes and athletes commission play in shaping a culture of safety, respect, and fairness in sport from your perspective?
First of all, I need to say that what Rasha just told, like, it hit so hard, because I was in the situation where I know the guy who was so well respected in the world of sport because of so many medals, like from his other side was so not well respected, but he got through everything because he was a respected coach. He was a successful coach. So I understand this, what Rasha said, so deeply. When you ask me this question, I firstly believe that I think it's basically it's everyone's responsibility. We all need to be part of this, let's say, of this movement of creating a safe future and safe presence at the same time, safe present and safe future for everyone. We have to start thinking that even if we see something, we cannot be bystanders. Like, there's so many bystanders because they're either afraid, or they're probably afraid that they will have like consequences of being a whistleblower or something. So we have to know that creating a safe environment is actually everyone's job. Like, it doesn't, even if you're athlete, if you're entourage, if you're an organizer, and we have to know that it's not going to come, like, the initiative for that is not going to come from the lower layers of the pyramid. It has to go from the top down. It cannot go from the bottom. So when it comes to athletes committee, first of all, I always like to say that athletes commission is like a safe space for athletes. We are here to basically verbalize what other athletes think. We are the voice of athletes. And from that perspective, I firmly believe that we are the ones who can always advocate for safe sport. We can do it. I think that through our channels, we can share the information about safe sport. We can share the information about existence of harassment and abuse. We can we can share education. But from the bottom of my heart, I think that the key in prevention of any form of harassment and abuse is in education and training. And if we have the athletes committee as a safe space, I think that we should be that group of people who is going to advocate and promote the safe sport.
Thank you very much, Zorana, for also these directions, the direction that we can all look into and work towards. I would like to now give the floor again to Catherine Moyon de Bec. In your experience, Catherine, as an advocate for safe sport and safeguarding, what changes do you think are necessary in sports culture and governance to better protect athletes from abuse?
Sport is life. Young people deserve the best, with priority being to be happy and in good mental and physical health. The multiple forms of violence are in contradiction with the ethical, educational, humanist, and environmental principle of the Olympic Charter of the International Olympic Committee. In high-level sport, the quest for excellence is not in contradiction with the demand for performance. We just have to find the right balance while respecting the physical and psychological integrity of the athletes. Without a strong and assertive will at the highest level, with adequate means, nothing will really change. The commitment and exemplary behavior of leaders are essential to ensuring respect for the human dignity everywhere and for everyone, particularly with regard to children and teenagers. In a male environment, it is important that women take more of their places, not in opposition, but with respect for skills and difference. Progress is not enough. They must be organized consistently to optimize the effectiveness of procedure, add and multiply changes over time with appropriate communication. Actions must be understood, anticipated, deployed, applied at all levels of the hierarchy. The individual and collective responsibility of adults must make it possible to anticipate, alert, and act with professionals. We must strengthen action with governments, public authorities, the international sports movement, major organizations in Europe and around the world, and other stakeholders concerned with child protection in each country. We must work transversally between different ministries internationally with a constructive spirit and a recruitment through a chain of protection, attention, prevention, support. We must ensure a welcoming, respectful, healthy, secure, and protective environment. Like in a relay race, where everyone has a particular role and passes it on to be team to share and win together.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Together, I think, is the key word that keeps coming up. And I would now like to ask Giulia Perone, what should organizations keep in mind when working to support survivors and create a safe environment for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step would be to believe them. I think we have a lot of examples of sports organizations that blame victims, they minimize what happened, they try to sweep the cases under the carpet. So I think the most important step is to really believe them and not blaming that for what happened, but actually, have the institutional courage to recognize what happened and to say, okay, like we are going to listen to you and like hear your story. And for me, like it kind of goes back to what I was trying to say earlier about voice. So I think for a survivor, I mean, we know that abuse happens when there's a differential of power. And I think to give the power back to survivors, to give the voice back to someone who has felt voiceless and used, I think it's very powerful, both for the organization and the survivor, because I think this could be very also a healing process for someone to be believed, but the institution is very powerful. So I guess like giving the voice and the power back, and really trying to empower the survivor and putting them at the center of the conversation, because I think also as survivors, we know what happened and we know what went wrong and what shouldn't happen. And so I think survivors also have a lot of insights into what we can do to make things better. And so I think they can really help with policy changes and better safeguarding practices to create a safer sports environment for the other people. So I think also the other important thing is that we don't involve survivor just for the sake of it, but that we want to really institution want to implement like real change, and not they're just tokenizing someone's story for because it looks good on paper, but because you actually want to implement something real and you want to create a safer sport environment.
Thank you, Julia, for speaking so frankly and to the point here, especially in the last words. Hopefully there's action beyond the words. I would now like to ask Claudia Bokel to address the last question that we have in this first part of the forum. Claudia, you're involved with the city of Dordrecht in the Netherlands, where starting in 2025, only local sports clubs that have signed the Safe Sport regulations will be supported. Could you share more about the goals of this initiative, the process of implementing it, and the impact of this that you hope it will have?
Yes, what we often see is when we look at safe sport, we look at the international federations or at the national federations, but we also want the impact on the local level, and to make sure that, especially there where sport is with a lot of volunteers and mostly difficult or more difficult to organize, that also they understand the importance of safe sport. So the city that I work for, we have agreed to work on a safe sport code. This is coming from the National Olympic Committee of the Netherlands, but we have made it mandatory as of January 1st in 2025 that we as the city only work with those sports clubs that have agreed to that safe sport code. Now, what we didn't want to do is that they just tick a box. So we've had a whole process of about a year to make them understand what it means, how important it is, where we can help them, so that it's not only it's mandatory, but that they really live this safe sport code. And the consequence could be that they couldn't rent a sports hall from the city, or that they can't get any financial support for organizing an event, something like that. But the most important thing really is that they understand the importance of this safe sport code. And we also saw that only 25% of the inhabitants of the city do sports at a sports club. And through this whole process, we saw that also the commercial sports services like a fitness club or something, that they also said, oh, but we understand the importance of this, so we also want to work on this, and we want to be part of this. So it was a win-win situation, actually. And for us, really good to see that clubs are in that process. I think we will manage to have almost everybody ready by the 1st of January, not only to have it on paper, but also to understand the importance, but also to work together because not every club has the capacity to have, for instance, a safe sport officer. So you can have one safe sport officer for several clubs. So I think the project is going really well. And actually to also work on the bottom of the pyramid and to not only always look at the top, at the International Federation, you have to do something, but also that you can do something on a local level and to make sure that that it's internalized by everyone involved.
Claudia, thank you so much for sharing this. I would call it best practice, where actually it really, the efforts really fall on the ground, and it sounds like they fell on the fertile ground when others wanted to actually be a part of it, not avoiding it. And we'd like to learn more about this too, and make it as an example, because I think it's really wonderful. And in our experience, not everybody is so open to tackle these issues as you can imagine. So thank you so much from my side, first of all, to all the athletes, to the former, current one, and all the Olympians. Your voices do matter, should matter. You are the heart of the sport, and we need to make sure they are listened to. And thank you for doing more for the sport beyond just your sport career as an athlete. Thank you for sharing your testimonies, insight, recommendations, and I invite all of us in the audience, to continue making our own contributions to safe sport environments from whatever angle that we are able to improve it. So thank you very much. And with that, I would like to give the floor to Ilva for some final thoughts here.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone, for the insightful thoughts and sharing your voice. I would like to just show the homepage of the BEST project. If anyone would like to learn more about the outcomes of the project, this is the homepage. The homepage will be shared in the chat shortly as well. In the homepage, you can find various toolkits that have been prepared, educational toolkits, awareness toolkits to speak more, to educate about safeguarding, and as well legal frameworks for sport organizations and sport events. These are the partners of the project. If you have any questions, main coordinator is the European Olympic Academies. You can always get in touch with them or visit their homepage. We would like to extend the invitation to the second Safe Sport Forum, actually taking place already this Friday, hosted by the Azerbaijan National Olympic Committee. As well, BEST project will be presented there on the emphasis of the legal frameworks, and as well, representative from the International Olympic Committee will be part of this forum. We will share the link to register in the chat as well. If you have time, please feel free to join. I see that we have, I think, no questions. So we would like to say thank you, everyone, for being part of this. And really, I think the safe sport starts with each of us, where we are, even at home in the sport club, doing sport, and just be the example. Thank you, everyone, and wishing everyone a good day. And the recording will be available on the YouTube from the next